What if I told you the most dangerous force in your life isn't outside you, it's inside you? And it may not wear the face of a villain. It may wear the face of someone who once held you, loved you, nurtured you. What if the force that holds you back the most in your adult life is the mother within? Not your literal mother now, but the psychological imprint of her, what Carl Jung called the terrible mother. The one who doesn't let you grow, who overprotects you into weakness, who loves you in a way that keeps you small. This is not a story about blaming your mother. It's about understanding how the archetype of the mother, when distorted, becomes a prison that lives in your psyche and quietly erodes your strength, your will, your identity.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
We all carry within us the mother. She is one of the oldest symbols in the collective unconscious. She is life-giver, protector, nurturer, but also the devourer, the controller, the smotherer. And if you don't become conscious of this duality, you will be ruled by it. You'll either remain dependent, always looking for someone to save you, comfort you, approve of you, or you'll rebel blindly, rejecting all care and softness, unable to receive love at all. Jung warned us, when the mother archetype is unconscious, it becomes fate. It becomes the invisible hand that guides our failures, our addictions, our fears, our inability to separate and become our full selves. So let's ask a brutal question. How much of your life is still shaped by the need for your mother's approval or her absence? How often do you censor yourself, shrink yourself, sabotage yourself because some part of you is still trying to please or punish her? This is the part most people never face. Because to confront the mother within is to confront the foundation of your identity. She was the first one you loved. The first one who loved or didn't love you. And that experience became your blueprint for how you relate to the world. This is why Jung was obsessed with archetypes, because they are deeper than memory. They are patterns that shape the way we live, dream, relate, and even suffer. The mother is not just a person, it's a force. And when that force turns dark, it doesn't scream. It whispers. It whispers lies like, "You're not ready. You're too sensitive. You'll never make it without me." And if you listen to that voice long enough, you start mistaking it for your own. That's how the mother who once gave you life begins to destroy it from within. Now imagine this, a man in his 30s, brilliant, creative, full of potential, but unable to commit, unable to lead, unable to fully step into his own power. Every time he tries, he hesitates. Why? Because unconsciously he fears hurting his mother. He fears surpassing her. He fears becoming independent, because deep down he believes that means betrayal. The mother complex has wrapped itself around his ambition, and now he confuses maturity with abandonment. This isn't fiction. This is the invisible script running through millions of lives. And it's not just men. Women, too, carry this wound. The inner mother tells them they must be soft, agreeable, self-sacrificing, that their desires are selfish, that their anger is dangerous, that their independence is rebellion, not evolution. And so they stay small, sweet, silent while something inside them screams. But they don't hear it, because the scream is drowned in the lullaby of childhood conditioning. Jung said that the task of individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself, requires confronting your parents as archetypes. not just as people, but as symbols in your psyche. And the mother is the most powerful of them all. To face her is to face the fear of being unloved, unworthy, unprotected. It is to face the fear of becoming your own authority. Are you ready to do that? Are you ready to break the tie, not out of hatred, but out of love for who you could become? The terrible mother isn't always cruel. In fact, she's often too nice, too protective, too involved. She rescues you from discomfort, from failure, from risk. But in doing so, she rescues you from growth. And so you remain emotionally infantile, afraid of the world, afraid of yourself, dependent on others for validation, unable to stand alone. This is the destruction Jung warned us about. A mother who never lets go is more dangerous than one who abandons. Because at least abandonment forces you to grow. Overprotection paralyzes you while convincing you you're safe. Now take a moment. Look at your life. Where are you still being mothered, not physically, but psychologically? Where are you still waiting for permission? Waiting for reassurance? Waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to be who you are. That's the voice of the inner mother. And unless you confront her, she will sabotage every bold move you try to make. Not because she hates you, but because she's afraid. And she's made you afraid too. Let's go deeper. The mother archetype is connected to the unconscious, to the earth, to the realm of feeling, instinct, chaos. She is the womb, but the womb can become a tomb if you never leave it. Jung believed that every hero's journey begins with separating from the mother. Not rejecting her, but differentiating from her, becoming an individual. And that requires death. The death of your child's self. The death of the fantasy that someone will always protect you. Can you do that? Can you let the child within you die so that the adult can finally live? This is where the real pain begins. Because to leave the mother psychologically is to feel alone, vulnerable, exposed. It is to say, I will no longer be rescued. I will face the world on my own terms. I will take responsibility for my choices, even if they hurt. I will carry my own weight. And that kind of psychological birth is terrifying. But it is also the beginning of real life. Too many people stay in the womb far into adulthood. They live in a state of eternal adolescence, always blaming, always waiting, always needing. They hide behind their trauma, their pain, their parents. But the truth is, you cannot heal by staying connected to the very pattern that wounds you. You must break the spell. You must confront the mother within and ask, who are you protecting me from? And who are you preventing me from becoming? Jung didn't say this process was easy. He knew it was brutal. It feels like betrayal. It feels like heresy. To question the mother is to shake the roots of your soul. But if you don't, you will live a life of emotional slavery. You will keep playing small, keep choosing comfort over courage, keep sabotaging your relationships, your purpose, your power. All in the name of staying safe inside the psychological womb. But what if the womb has already become your cage? What if the very thing you think is protecting you is slowly suffocating you? You must understand, the mother archetype isn't evil. It's essential. It gives us life, love, connection, empathy. But like all archetypes, it has a shadow. And when that shadow is unrecognized, it takes over. It whispers to you that you're not ready, that you're too fragile, that you'll fail. And the cruelest part, you'll believe it, because that voice sounds so caring, so familiar, so loving. But it's not love. It's fear wearing the mask of love. So how do you break free? You begin by seeing, by noticing when you're acting from the fear of disapproval, when you're shrinking to stay safe, when you're avoiding conflict to keep the peace with an invisible parent figure in your mind. You begin to speak, to act, to risk, even when your inner mother screams. Especially then, because that scream is the sign that you're touching the edge of your cage. And then you choose to grow. You choose to suffer consciously, to feel the pain of separation, to grieve the loss of the fantasy that someone will come save you. And in that grief, something new is born, a self, a soul, a being that is no longer ruled by the past. This is the death Jung spoke of, the death that precedes transformation, the death that leads to rebirth, not as someone else, but as who you truly are. Now that we've opened the door, we must walk through it. Because once you see the mother within the one who coddles, controls, and cripples, you can't unsee her. She doesn't just live in your childhood memories. She lives in your hesitation, your guilt, your need to be liked, your fear of failure. She lives in your patterns, the ones you keep repeating, the ones that feel too familiar to notice. The secret is this: she is not just your personal mother. She is the ancient, archetypal mother, the one who exists in all of us. And unless we confront her shadow, we will never fully be ourselves. Carl Jung knew that the psyche is not just made up of memories. It is a living ecosystem of symbols, forces, and stories. The mother is one of the most powerful of those forces. She has the power to create life, yes, but also to consume it. In mythology, she appears as the Great Mother, the nurturing earth goddess, but also as Kali, the devourer, the destroyer. In fairy tales, she is the loving queen, but also the wicked witch. These are not just stories. They are maps of the human soul. And if we don't see these patterns in ourselves, we become puppets to them. So what does the devouring mother look like in real life? She's the one who gives too much, who makes you dependent, who says, "I'll do it for you," and make sure you never learn how to do it yourself. She's the voice that says, "Don't go too far. Don't take that risk. Don't leave me." She wraps her fear around you and calls it love. And the worst part is you believe her, because the child in you still wants to feel safe, still wants to be held, still wants someone to say, "I've got you." But at some point, that safety starts to strangle you. And if your real mother wasn't like that, it doesn't mean you're free. The archetype still lives in your unconscious. It manifests in relationships, in partners who treat you like a child. It shows up in careers you never pursue because you're afraid of disappointing your family. It shows up in the way you talk to yourself, the way you second-guess every decision, the way you become your own jailer. That's the internalized mother, the one who doesn't need to say anything anymore because now her voice is your own. Jung would call this a possession of the psyche. When an archetype takes over, you lose your individuality. You become a character in someone else's story. And the mother complex is one of the most common forms of this possession. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you haven't separated psychologically, you're still a child no matter how adult your appearance. You'll still seek approval, still fear rejection, still sabotage your growth to maintain the illusion of connection. But connection built on dependency is not love. It's control. Let's go deeper. The terrible mother archetype doesn't just exist in women. She lives in men too. In men, she often shows up as a fear of independence, a fear of stepping into authority. A man with a mother complex may be outwardly successful but inwardly unsure. He avoids confrontation. He seeks comfort over challenge. He may be drawn to women who mother him or reject women entirely because he unconsciously resents the control he once felt. Either way, he is not free. And in women, the mother complex can show up as self-erasure. A woman may feel she has to be endlessly giving, endlessly patient, endlessly soft. She suppresses her anger, her ambition, her wildness because those things aren't feminine. She becomes the good girl, the caretaker, the one who never says no. But inside, rage builds. Depression builds. A sense of betrayal builds because she has sacrificed her fullness to fit into a script written by the archetype, not by her own soul. So what is the way out? Jung taught that the process of individuation, becoming your true self, requires confrontation. You must confront the mother within. You must look her in the eye and say, "Thank you for what you gave me. But I'm not yours anymore. My days." This is not an act of cruelty. It's an act of sacred separation. It's the psychological equivalent of birth. Just as the physical body must leave the mother's womb to live, the psyche must leave the mother's influence to become whole. But here's the paradox. We are terrified of leaving. Because leaving the mother means leaving safety, leaving certainty, leaving the past, and stepping into the unknown. It means becoming responsible for your own life. It means making choices that others may not approve of. It means risking failure, rejection, loneliness. And yet, it's the only way to grow, the only way to become real. Let me ask you something. Where in your life are you still waiting for permission? Permission to be bold, to be different, to say no, to say yes to something terrifying but necessary? Who are you afraid of disappointing? And what would happen if you disappointed them and survived? This is the threshold, the line between childhood and adulthood. And most people never cross it. They build lives that look independent, but are secretly shaped by fear. They become successful on the outside, but are still ruled by inner doubts that trace back to the mother's voice. They become parents themselves, only to pass on the same patterns they never dared to break. That is the generational curse Jung warned about. The mother who destroys you from within isn't just your past, she becomes your future, unless you stop the cycle. To break free, you need more than awareness. You need action. You need to create space between that voice and your decisions. When you hear the voice that says you can't, or you shouldn't, or you'll fail, pause. Ask yourself, whose voice is this really? Is it mine, or is it hers? And then choose differently. Choose growth over comfort, truth over safety, integrity over approval. You will feel guilt. You will feel fear. That's normal. That's the child within you protesting. But you are not a child anymore. And your task now is to become the parent you never had, the one who pushes you toward your potential, not just your protection. The one who says, I believe in you. Now go. And if your real mother is still alive, this process becomes even more profound. Because now you get to relate to her not as a dependent, but as an equal. You get to love her without needing her to define you. You get to forgive her not as a victim, but as someone who has outgrown the need to be rescued. That is the highest form of healing. Not blame, not distance, but differentiation. This kind of deep psychological work is not glamorous. It won't win you applause, but it will give you your life back. Because once you are free from the mother within, you become capable of real love, real leadership, real creation. You stop looking for someone to complete you. You stop fearing your own greatness. You become a whole human being, no longer ruled by the past, no longer afraid of the future. Carl Jung said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." Don't let that be your story. Don't carry their fears as your own. Don't live a life of imitation. You were born to be more than a reflection. You were born to be a fire. And sometimes to light that fire, you must burn down the old story completely. So today, ask yourself, am I ready to leave the mother behind, not in hatred, but in honor? Am I ready to give birth to myself? This is the final phase of the journey where the mother's shadow no longer controls you, but where her lessons, her truths, and even her flaws become fuel for your transformation. If you've come this far, it means you're no longer just curious. You're ready to face the most primal force in your psyche and reshape your life from the inside out. This is not just about psychological insight. It's about initiation. It's about stepping into the fire of your own growth and coming out the other side with your soul intact. Carl Jung believed that no one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And the terrible mother that consuming, controlling, overbearing presence is one of the darkest forces we ever face. But once you make her conscious, she loses her power to manipulate from the shadows. You begin to see how she whispers in moments of doubt, how she paralyzes your desire with guilt, how she sabotages your independence by making you crave approval. And suddenly you realize that voice is not your truth. It's an echo, a residue, a ghost. At this point, you may feel grief, not just for what your mother was or wasn't, but for what you never became because of it. You'll feel the weight of missed chances, swallowed words, dreams deferred, because you were still tethered to a psychological umbilical cord. That grief is sacred. It is the mourning of a self that never had permission to live. And you must allow it. You must feel it fully without rushing to fix it. Because only by grieving what you were not allowed to be can you make room for the person you're meant to become. But grief is not enough. You must create. You must actively build your own voice, your own values, your own path. And that means becoming conscious of the inner parent you now need to be. The inner mother must be rebalanced, not destroyed, but integrated. She must evolve from protector to supporter, from controller to nurturer, from voice of fear to voice of wisdom. That's the alchemy Jung pointed toward, not the rejection of the archetype, but its transformation. Ask yourself this: what qualities did the mother within suppress in you? Was it your anger because it was too loud, too unruly, too risky? Was it your sexuality because it threatened the image of innocence? Was it your ambition because it would make you too independent, too powerful, too far away? Whatever it was, that's your path. That's your medicine. That's the part of you that needs to be reclaimed, not in rebellion, but in reverence. Because the parts of you that were banished are the very parts you need to become whole. You must learn to speak with that inner voice. When she says, "Don't do that, you'll fail," you respond, "It's okay to fail. I won't abandon myself." When she says, "You're being selfish," you say, "I'm allowed to have needs." When she says, "You're not ready," you whisper back, "No one ever is. But I'm going anyway." This is how you reclaim your agency, not by shutting her out, but by speaking a new truth over the old one. Over time, the voice changes. It softens, it matures, because now you are parenting yourself. And what about your real mother? If she's still alive, this is where things can become deeply healing or deeply complex. Because once you've done the inner work, you stop needing her to change. You stop trying to get her to understand, to approve, to validate. You begin to see her not as a god, not as a villain, but as a human. A woman shaped by her own mother and her mother's mother and generations of unconsciousness. And that's when compassion can finally replace resentment. Not because you excuse what happened, but because you no longer need to carry it. Forgiveness, in this context, is not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about realizing that holding on to the wound keeps you tethered. Jung said that liberation comes not from erasing the past, but from integrating it. You carry the wound, but now it becomes a source of wisdom, not weakness. You remember, but without bitterness. You see the patterns, but you're no longer trapped in them. That's the power of individuation. It doesn't erase the mother, it redefines your relationship to her. Now let's talk about what this looks like in the world. A person who has integrated the mother no longer fears rejection. They are no longer controlled by emotional blackmail. They do not crave approval the way they once did. They can say no without guilt. They can fail without collapse. They can hold space for others without losing themselves. That is freedom. That is adulthood. That is the fruit of this difficult inner work. This person also becomes a better parent, a better partner, a better leader. Why? Because they are no longer parenting from lack. They are no longer unconsciously projecting their unresolved relationship with their own mother onto everyone else. They don't need their children to complete them. They don't need their partners to mother them. They don't need the world to tell them they're okay. They are rooted in themselves, and from that root, real love can grow. You see, the mother within isn't just a prison. She can also be a portal. Once transformed, she becomes the source of deep creativity, intuition, empathy, and strength. She becomes the part of you that knows how to care for others without controlling them, how to hold pain without collapsing, how to love without losing yourself. That is the divine mother, the evolved mother, and she lives within you too. But you must earn her. You must pass through the fire of separation. You must survive the loneliness of becoming your own person. You must choose integrity over comfort, truth over approval, freedom over obedience. And if you do, you don't just heal yourself. You heal the lineage. You become the one who ends the cycle of unconscious parenting. The one who says, "It stops with me." So now the deepest question of all, who are you without the mother? Without the need to please her, to defy her, to carry her pain? Who are you when you stop living for her, against her, or through her? When you let go of the story she wrote for you, what story do you finally begin to write for yourself? This is the moment. The moment you choose to be born again, not physically, but psychologically, spiritually. The moment you stop being a child in the shell of an adult. The moment you say, "I will not be ruled by the past. I will become who I was meant to be." Let it hurt. Let it shake you. Let it burn. Because on the other side of that fire is everything you've ever wanted to become. And when the voice of the mother says, "But you'll be all alone," you look her in the eye and say, "That's how freedom begins." And maybe, just maybe, in that moment, she smiles. Because the true mother doesn't want you to stay in her arms forever. She wants you to fly.